there's Ryan. Let's go ahead and bring in our good friend. It is Tuesday. Ryan Cristian, the Last American Vagabond, one of the best and most thorough hosts on the planet.
Is that him?
Or this guy?
That's whatever you want. See, look at the thing. It's right. It's there.
I got to say this right off the bat. We are confirmed for tomorrow. Danny Haifong has just confirmed. Matt Arrett is there, and TLAV. Ryan Cristian will be there tomorrow for a nice little panel with moderated by Fiorella on the combo couch, talking a little bit about China. Trump, China.
You know what? Quick funny anecdote. I guess it would fall in that category. But Danny, his last name starts H-A, right? And I forget why we had a connection in the past. I think it might have even been through. Is he associated with the Doctors for COVID Ethics? Is he on like that email chain and stuff? It doesn't even matter. The point is somehow I have his email, and I think we've connected in the past for different things. And I always send myself emails to Howley Chef. H-A is one of my other personal emails. And I send it to myself just to keep research. And so I keep it, I don't have to search for it. I just pull up my email, look at it. I have probably 50 times over the last couple of years have accidentally sent him an email of some ridiculous with no context. Just, oh shoot, I meant to send it to myself. So he probably thinks I'm like spamming him with research. It was total accident every time.
You'll get to address that when I see tomorrow.
him. I just think it's funny.
You know that thing about transhumanist people controlling robot dogs? That wasn't meant to go to you, Danny. That was
yeah, exactly. It's like some of them too are like random things that I just want to look into that I never even talk about. So you think I'm some QAnon conspiracy theorist dumping, because we all have those people that just dump you links all the time. Some of them are great. I've got people like that include me, and they're good researchers, but others are just like a catch-all for damn near anything. So I hope he doesn't think that's what I am.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of those people that have gotten the Slow News Day email over the years, and it's just basically a file dump.
Yeah, exactly. You get like 75 emails in one day from them,
Bro, I don't know if you've ever watched the show or not, but we're already pretty busy, man.
Yeah. Well, it comes from a good place though. Like I never want to discourage that, because I'm like, whether I use it or not, I really appreciate that people are taking the time. They're thinking about you. Yeah, and they're going, hey, they should talk about that, whether it's correct or not. It's awesome. I mean, that's the kind of open source investigation idea that I think James Corbett, at least in my experience, really pioneered. And I think we should all emulate that, because they don't know how to stop that. They can't get past that. And even their, investigative journalists that don't exist anymore in the corporate media, they're wildly outpaced by what happens in that regard. Like people just scooping stuff up, and, people like us can acknowledge that, half of it might be false, like Twitter, for example, there's a lot of nonsense on there, but if you know how to use it, it is a real time hub of information. One of the best, but I hate that. I don't want Twitter to be that, but that's why we should lean into these other platforms, whether left or right or not, the Getters and whatever else, because it's kind of the same thing. We just broaden it out, anyway.
They're good for I always go to Getter to take a look and say, all right, what am I missing over here? What's not on Twitter? What are they talking about? Even though it's very biased.
What's interesting though is I tend to find the same stuff on all of them. You're right, Getter, and they're much more conservative. You won't find the other arguments from the left, but in regard to finding those things on Getter, I always find those same arguments on Twitter. It's not like Twitter's blocking those. I mean, in some regard, but that's kind of a misinterpretation I think that we have, is oh, well, you're going to find all the secret conservative stuff that Twitter's blocking. And I'm like, well, that's right here on Twitter. So is everything else, and even the shooters, mass shooters. Look at, he posted on True Social. I'm like, and he posted on Instagram, and he posted on Facebook, and he posted on Twitter. It's just a weird focus. We all know why that's happening. It's very clear. I think the conservatives are being set up right now.
Twitter did get rid of James Lindsay, though.
Wow.
Who's that? James Lindsay? I don't know who that is.
Yeah, he's the guy who's been doing all of the critical race theory stuff, and he was the OK groomer dude for a long time, who would just call out all of the people who, all of the libs of TikTok people and shit like that.
Got it. Yeah, you can't attack that sacred discussion, or else you get, there's some things that they just won't.
Discourses is his podcast. He kind of skyrocketed, I don't know, last year-ish. He did a thing a while back called Critical Theories, where him and Helen Pluckrose got together and wrote a series of just fake and ridiculous like critical studies papers and got 14 of them published in like major journals. And so that's kind of how he broke into I don't know, but consciousness, I suppose.
That's an important conversation right there. There was I forget who it was. This was a while ago when this was kind of a real focus, and it still should be. But it was also in like there's like a gender studies kind of thing, or no, is it gender or it doesn't even matter. The point being is there's people on all these different veins of this kind of like woke mentality politics that is being framed as science, you know, and they write these papers that are like meant to be ridiculous. Like they, you know, there was one that I saw, they had this whole series of it where he was talking about how he put it together. And it was like, he's grabbing at the most ridiculous, you know, subjective conclusions. And just because he makes these certain points that he knows they're going to nod at, it published as peer reviewed and everything. And it's like, how embarrassing. So, you know, it speaks to the idea of the peer reviewed concept, which is valid, but it doesn't mean that these things are true just because it's peer reviewed by a circle of people that all agree. You know, have you seen that clip that I play that a lot of people played, like about what science is? You know, that guy,
yeah.
Off the top of my head. He's so right about that. That's academia, which is valid and important, or can be, but science is the opposite. It's very rare that it comes from inside those circles, the new big changes. You know, I think the quote he says is candle makers had no, I forget what he said, paraphrasing, like no perception of what the future would be like in lights and everything else. And of course they attack any new thing because it doesn't make sense to them. But if we hadn't have let it happen, we'd still be in candles and, you know, in the dark. It's very interesting.
Yeah. No, it's the idea of discovery coming from the most insulated of all places seems unlikely unless what you're trying to discover is like something incredibly small and hard, you know, like that. I guess in a lab setting it sort of makes sense, but if you're trying to figure something out about the world in which you live, you kind of have to go out to where very few people are.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I also think it's more about, you know, that these grouping, I mean, even in the idea of something small, like let's just make it something about, you know, virology or whatever else, like it's still the same idea that they come at this with a preconceived idea of what they're looking at, what it means, how you define these things. And maybe they're right. But his point and all these points are simply that, and there's something new, something that we're just dealing with. They're going to try to fit that into the model that they already have, as opposed to trying to think about what else it could be. And they won't. We've seen that with COVID-19, with everything else. Like, you're not allowed to speak outside the gospel, you know? That's why it's very clear how this is controlled.
I got to say this much too, kind of digressing back to the whole Getter kind of conversation we were talking about. I don't look about sometimes what they do put up there. What I pay attention what they don't talk about. And it's really disappointing that a lot of conservatives who go on Getter are not talking about what's going on in Ukraine at all.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? It's just really, really disappointing. I don't see enough stories over there. You know, we'll hear some of the lawmakers that they'll, you know, like the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Matt Gaetz, who spoke a little bit about it, you know, but they're not posting up videos of what's going on. They're not, you know, talking about what Scott Ritter's saying or any of these people. And here's the thing. There's a lot of people out there that want to know exactly what's going on in the Ukraine. I don't know where they fall on the political spectrum. Maybe they're just independents and they just want to know some real news because they obviously see, you know, Western media censoring everything that comes out of Russia. So, you know, I often pay attention to that. And that has been a big disappointment. There's plenty of election stuff over in Getter. There's plenty of COVID stuff over on Getter. You know what I'm saying? There's plenty of anti-China stuff over on Getter, but they're not talking enough about that war. And that's just something that's really disappointing to me.
Totally agree, man. You know, and I don't know, I can't, these are always my opinions, which is kind of always there, but I believe that's a partisan thing. You know, there's plenty of conservatives I know that are all about this. Like I reference my brother a lot lately because he is somebody who's constantly sending me in research and stuff, and he comes across some pretty good things. But I see him as kind of a recovering two-party paradigm individual. You know, he still very much identifies as conservative, and he really still believes in Trump to a large degree. But we're able to have these objective conversations about it, and he does hear me, and we, you know, and that's all I really want from people. You know, is to be able to have even if we disagree. But to me, the people that are really still in that my point was there's plenty of conservatives that would poke at that and say things about it. But by and large, I think from like the hard right, not meaning like extreme right, the play like that, just people that are like hardcore in the Republican Party. You're not supposed to talk about it. You know, it's like we're supposed to kind of soft pedal the support of that because war is always supported by both sides, you know, and the idea that China, Russia, bad guy, even, you know, even though there's this weird kind of differentiation with Trump. So it's very interesting to see. And you're right to point that out. And there's a lot of things like that. And I think that always tends to show you that there are blind spots. Regardless, if you're in the two-party illusion, you have blind spots, and usually by choice. Again, I should make it absolute. There's plenty of people I think that may be in there, identify, that maybe see everything we do, but it's generalized, and we do see that a lot. It's a good point.
Yeah. Well, this whole idea that vote Republican and everything will be okay right now, right?
Right.
And, obviously, if you put them on paper, you put them down next to each other, you can say that the Republican Party is way better on a lot more issues than the Democratic Party is right now. At least the things that are important to us, like freedom of speech, freedom of the press, right to bear arms. You know what I'm saying?
On paper, I would agree with that 100%.
On paper, but at the end of the day, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Kevin McCarthy, these people run the party, and they are hawks. They are neocons to the fullest. Right. Whether it be Russia, China, it doesn't make a difference. So, I mean, we just got to keep talking about the war and keep pushing back, and especially when we get like a lot of like libertarian-minded conservatives now that are kind of like, all right, maybe we shouldn't be wasting billions of dollars into Ukraine. That this idea that Putin is trying to expand the old Soviet Union is full of shit. Well, see, we got to capitalize on that.
Totally. And these are important conversations. But for me, it always comes back to like, okay, let's think about it like this. What is that conversation, or even all of this conversation, the way that it's kind of like been couched right now? Like, it's obviously we see Ukraine, and the whole conversation's kind of been pulled back a little bit, right? They're focusing monkeypox and all these different things around the world, but they stopped talking about Ukraine as much and as aggressively because they lost control of that narrative. Even their side's going, yeah, well, there's a Nazi problem. Oh, well, all these things they shouted down as absolute ridiculous conspiracy theory are now being equivocated. Like, well, maybe kind of, but he's still wrong. Like, that's so embarrassing. But for me, what's not being talked about is the unbelievably obvious, overwhelmingly verified, proven, documented discussion that they are literally murdering children in Donbass right now. They are using these butterfly mines, and they're bombing into the civilian areas. I mean, there are people on all sides literally watching and filming, proving it's them. And you not even the partisan conversation is not talking about it on either side. The corporate media is not talking about it. I think that's why. Like, they give you a bone, right? They let you think we broke through a little bit. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, and Connor, if you'll pull up the first thing in the TLAV section part. Oh God, thank you. Jesus, man, it's been saunaing in here. This
pretty soon you'll be able to see your breath.
This, I think, it is one of the things that they don't want people looking at right now. We're about to go full on into chip wars, and these trips and provocations and posturings around Taiwan and China have a lot to do with the fact that the majority of chip production for the West comes from 2 plants in China, that there's a lot of insider trading going on between a number of Congress critters and NVIDIA and TMSC. You can scroll there. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Announced Friday by U.S. Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security and enacted today, the rule will ban the export of 2 ultra-wide band gap semiconductor materials, as well as some kind of electronic computer-aided design technology and pressure gain combustion. I can't see that word because technology. There we go. They're already starting. We can pull this where I'm headed with this is that they're already starting into like particular sanctions on materials. They're banning certain types of products. This is how this kind of thing starts. There's a forced crisis, forced shortage. Now we're in a situation where for the safety of our national security, we have to secure Taiwan in order to keep our computers running, period, until we get the CHIPS Act pushed through. No matter how much pork in it, no matter how much money is actually just to give away to a couple of idiots, we got to push the CHIPS Act through. We got to ram up U.S. and domestic production. Go ahead.
I apologize. Give me 30 seconds.
Oh, no problem. You got
Hold on 1 second.
Ladies and gentlemen, do us a favor. Hit the like button. Hit the share button. We are here TLAV Tuesday. Later on, we'll have John Bush on the show. We got a loaded doc, ladies and gentlemen. So please join on in. We're also over on Rumble, rumbling on out. You can check us out over there. If you can watch both, that would always be great. Or at least just put the Rumble up so it's rolling so we can pump up that algorithm and get some More eyes on
artificially
got a hold of
inflate
something.
our numbers, solid, hardcore audience members.
No, that's not artifficially inflating. Artificially inflating is when you start other accounts or use bots to do it, Destiny style.
I suppose that's fair.
Who admitted to it? Some
fair.
people.
That's fair.
Sorry about that. My puppy got a hold of something. I could hear it. So
nice shirt, by the way.
So where do we going back to that point, or do we move on?
Oh yeah.
So the article was about the U.S. restricting exports of their materials. Is that what it was? Or was it the other way around?
No,
it's interesting because it seems like, I think what you're suggesting is they're shooting themselves in the foot to manufacture the illusion that we need to take Taiwan to make this kind of thing happen. I mean, that would make exact sense if that's what you're saying. And every other situation we've seen where even into protests, where they create protests and shoot people and then claim it to the other side and say, oh, we have to do something about it. It's the same. Play 1, 2, and 3. They can't get past their same mantra.
They're creating the reason for the protesters to be in the street so that they can kettle them, so that they could beat the shit out of them, kind of thing. But it is. It's a forced scarcity kind of thing, where sort of analogous to Joe Biden getting rid of a ton of U.S. coal reserves, a ton of U.S. liquid natural gas, all to China, by the way, all with long-term contracts with China. Like the whole thing, the whole ramping up of military in here and there, there's still contracts that exist that go on for another 20 years that have billions and billions and billions of dollars on the table.
Are they going to still be there when Trump gets in office? Or is I'm going to cancel this contract?
Well, here's what's interesting to me, guys, and this is the kind of thing that I get frustrated about, that we can't, that the partisan is that those things existed during Trump's administration. There was a lot of the same collaboration between China behind the scenes. It wasn't the same rhetoric. Now, there are new things happening, but there's new things happening in any administration going forward. The point is that, you could point out, like I always reference Corbett's work in this regard, of a long-standing example of how technology, military and otherwise, is sort of facilitated usually through Israel to China through the United States. And they're well aware of that. You can see the exact same models of work and technology, with just a different label on it. It's China's version, but it's the same technology. My point is there's more collaboration behind the scenes, whether Event 201, COVID-19, the Great Reset, with these groups and governments than I think we realize. So what frustrates me is that the right will see this. And again, I'll always throw out, I could be wrong about this. Maybe Biden's working directly with China to, usurp, and he's a treason. That's kind of the argument coming from the conservative side, is that, Biden's selling our country out to China, right? Or that they're working on
all of them. Like somebody said that, like I don't want to mention his name, but he said that China's not going to shoot down Nancy Pelosi's jet. Why would they get rid of their best asset? So it's they're talking about everybody within that.
I mean, it's a fair point to make. I mean, I'm not going to say I know for sure. I mean, how about these are always interworking parts. Whether there's some congressional members that are far more cozy with certain people for different reasons, like Biden and Ukraine. We know these kind of things are there, and I find that they're all corrupt, right? I mean, but my point was, you can see the same kind of work happening without the same rhetoric during Trump's administration. And it's just not pointed at, but because they say these, and I think they want them to take that bite and say that they're doing this instead of seeing it as a whole government thing. Just my opinions, but the point is still concerning. I just always have to make that differentiation, because I don't want it to be seen as one side or the other, because that leads to the savior idea. Round and round we go, like you were saying, of the rising wave and Trump's and conservatives bringing back freedom. But the whole thing with China is really interesting, because I talked about this with rare earth minerals long before we got to, the microchip thing's always been, it's important, especially with the Great Reset direction and the brain machine interface and where this is all going. But the rare earth minerals is really interesting, because it's obvious we can see, like he said, the two plants where most of these come from. The same kind of thing is with rare earth minerals. The U.S. government gets the predominant amount of their minerals they need for military, specifically from China. And this is why we see them, I would argue, going after lithium in Bolivia, and lithium and everything, gas and oil and gold in Venezuela, and, doing the same thing they're doing all over the world to kind of, balance that out, so they're not as entirely reliant on it. But either way, I think we can't ignore the collaboration that's there.
we certainly can't. And like you said, a lot of the same things that have been going on behind the scenes are still going on. The only thing that scares me is because you never know when the dam is going to break and where it's going to break or what's going to happen, right? We've been talking about certain things. We've been saying our opinion because it's not certain. There's a lot of, questions. And that's why I'm looking forward to the panel on Wednesday as you guys talk about these things, because there's always the possibility. Maybe it's over here, maybe it's over there. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's somewhere in between. But what really scares me this time and over the last several years is the rhetoric amongst the citizens when it comes to China, particularly with the conservatives and the patriots or that thing. It is really, really amped up to the point is where we're kind of pointing fingers and saying that China is pulling the strings. So that just always makes me cautious about who our next geopolitical war could be with. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And Taiwan could be one of those spots. So, I mean, 100%. I don't know what to think at the end of the day, but I am cautious and scared. And really, to tell you the truth, that's a G.I. Joe pro-war mentality that we have to address. This whole thought process that the conservatives and the patriots are anti-war is just ridiculous, and it's wrong. And they still don't acknowledge all the intervention in the global south, which is causing the main problem that they have. They want a wall and stuff. Hey, how about we stop the flow of freaking migrants coming here by getting out of their country? We got 80 bases in the global south. So it's really the actual ideology that is here of the anti-China-ness that's really, really scaring me.
Yeah. Well, it kind of does also seemingly undermine the very real, it's not to say that there's not both happening simultaneously, but the very real obvious influence from this new budding global government that is working with all of them together, right? That's very clearly what is driving the actions of our government, Biden specifically. I mean, it's not even hard to see. So why you would skip over that and make it only about China, it just seems willfully ignorant to me. Now, I'm not even saying that China's not involved. Maybe that's part of it, but you can't go, China's the one controlling everything, and omit what's happening with the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. It's just impossible to miss.
No, they do. They admit what's happening with the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. Yeah. They just tell you it's all China's fault.
Yeah.
That Bill Gates is a secret Chinese spy, that Klaus Schwab is a Maoist, and that, all of this
openly say this shit.
And that's their theory.
Well, but let's just say all that's true. I mean, it doesn't even, the point is simply still that there's so many other parts and examples of the connection between those groups and specifically Biden's administration or the government, or with Trump when he was there, or whatever it is, or other governments that you wouldn't argue are part of that. It's missing the forest for the trees, maybe deliberately, right? You're ignoring the bigger part of it to just couch this in an argument that's comfortable for one side of the partisanship. And that's why I think the two-party paradigm, I'm a broken record, man. It's the only thing that seems to stop us from coming right now. I swear to God, everybody sees what's happening, and all of this stuff, we just stop short of the main decision because it's like, you think that, you think this. And it's the same thing that happened with 9/11 truth, guys. Remember? Yeah. I mean, and I always said it's okay. It's there. We don't have to agree at the end of the day. We should eventually figure this out if we can, these smaller points, as long as we can see that the government lied to us, all of us collectively, all the government. But it comes about the Pentagon and ship or missiles or this or that, and then everyone just hates each other and we fight again. Oh, you're a shill, you're working for them, and then nothing ever happens. Even though all the evidence is there for 9/11, which we should all know by now. But nope, hasn't broken through, Kills me.
Joe Biden's role is just still freaking just drives me crazy.
You think he even remembers
he
what
just gets to sidestep that shit, laugh at the question, and then never get confronted about it ever again.
He was having meetings with the head of the Pakistani ISI. I mean, come on. 2 days prior. He met with the head of Pakistani ISI in DC or New York or something like that.
Prior to what?
To 9/11.
Right.
And he was confronted about it. He even answered the question. For tomorrow's show, by the way, I was going to tell Steve after that, hopefully we can film a question and then it would be used on the panel. I don't know if it will be. That's up to Fee.
Well, hang on, but real quick though, I do. Well, while Ryan was talking about this thing, I have to bring up something I saw. We got what, Waylon? What's up, buddy?
I was gonna ask where, when you said that he met with the
what does that mean?
I have no idea.
All right,
just said
we'll get it after when you remember it and stuff.
But this is 100% what Ryan's talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, you know, we can't all see that we're pointing at the same damn thing.
Everybody. Yeah. Well, to that matter, which is great. This is awesome because the question I'm going to ask, I'm just going to ask it right now. And the question is, despite what China is doing, my belief is that it doesn't fucking matter. If we took control of our government and our country, that's a whole nother thing in its own, we need not worry about China. We can do our own thing. And it wouldn't make a difference what China is doing. You know what I'm saying? That is my personal belief. It's that whole clean your own house kind of mentality first before we start pointing fingers. Go ahead, T.
I agree with that sentiment. And the first point that no matter what else is happening, the primary thing we need to do is look inward. You know, I mean, we pointing out at other people's problems and acting like that's our issue is the very reason we have as many problems as we do. Blowback. And, you know, I mean, think about the idea of Caitlin Johnstone always writes about this, the idea of all of this, you know, even whether on the surface or subconsciously or underneath the context, screaming that by doing violence to people or committing violence or doing terrible things, as long as you're doing it in the name of freedom, that it's okay, right? That might is right. And that is built, it's getting into people's minds, whether children or not. But so the point is, yes, focus inward, but I'm terrified of what China is doing and what they're building. And I think we should be concerned about that. But that never means that we should be going, well, we need to step out. And
why are you terrified of it? I mean,
because look at what they're doing. And it's exactly what their point, the social credit system, the technocratic future is further along in China than anywhere else right now. And that scares me, that we should be pointing out that is, I mean, the problem is that our government will point at that and say, look at how authoritarian they are, but then make 35 arguments about why that's kind of the right direction. And here's why we can do it better. You know, that's kind of how they're playing that. And they all want the same stuff. So it does scare me.
Two questions. Number one, isn't that China's citizens' responsibility to take care of that government? Number two, what examples do we have of them acting up military-wise around the globe? I mean, they have 3 bases outside of China, right? One of them, Djibouti. We have 1,000. I mean, there's a big difference. They go in with their checkbook. We go in with our guns. Go ahead.
Let me reiterate. Like I said, I'm not saying that we should. That this is about me being worried about what it's doing. That no way does that imply that I'm suggesting we go over and do something militarily about it, or that keep our eye on it. As people speak up and try to influence their people to do. Of course, it's their responsibility, but that doesn't mean that I'm not worried about it. Those things don't necessarily have to be connected. I'm just simply saying that look at what's going on over there. That's crazy. And yes, we should be able to speak about that, whether governmentally or not. The point is simply that we have to draw the line where we force people to take action.
We just know that how it manufactures consent for one party to go, we got to get in there. We have to get in there.
And there's where we should all speak up and say, no way.
How China see.
Right. That's when we should all speak up and say, you just crossed a very big line. Like, we can all acknowledge that's crazy. But when you even insinuate that we should be taking action to influence that used to be taboo. You know what I mean? Right. I feel that remember when Trump said when he was going to get elected, he's like, I'm not going to be the policeman of the world. We're not going to force our ideals on anybody else, and literally did that every second of his administration. They all do that, though.
We're like 20 years into Team America World Police as a thing, as an
openly stated project,
as a mock film.
Yes.
You know? Like, and it's there's where it all gets lost in this entire conversation is everyone seems to be under the impression that if you have an opinion, you're automatically advocating for the opposite. Mm-hmm. And that is just dumb. Please stop doing that. People are allowed to walk and chew gum at the same time, especially people like Ryan, who are advocating solutions for what we can do at home every single day, especially people like us who are also advocating solutions of what we can do at home every day, who aren't advocating for military action anywhere, period, for any fucking reason at all. So when you have a China sympathetic crowd or just a flat out anti-West crowd who views any criticism, regardless of video evidence or historical evidence or first-person testimony, regardless of that flies in the face of what they want the situation to be. They default to this, oh, well, because you have a valid opinion, the right is going to run with it and blow up the world. Now I'm responsible for what other people do.
No,
Fuck yourself.
No.
But that's the argument, and that's the position, and that's the default.
We saw it with COVID. It's the same thing, right? That
100%.
Your simple discussion, objectively or otherwise, about these topics may influence someone to make a choice that's dangerous. Therefore, you're being violent. It's like, whoa, that's a wild overjump. You know, this removes any idea of self-responsibility.
It's
the fact that you can make your own decisions.
Default.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
It's the AOC default. Well, now your words are violent, so we don't have to entertain what you say.
Right. Remember, this goes back before all this too, like the woke idea when they began. Remember, they're shaking cans full of fucking bolts and stuff. Like, you can't speak. It's like, yeah, that's real dialogue, right? I mean, it's so obvious this was meant to shut down conversation under a guise. I always make this reference. The same point, though. There's all these examples of this. It's like having a group that literally called itself anti-fascist that embodies every tenet of fascism. It's stupid and it's meant to be contradictory, but I keep saying nothing means everything. Everything means nothing. We're at a point where they've actively done this game where it only matters what you say in that moment and what your side says and what the political talking points are, and it can shift in 30 seconds. Look at what the CDC just did with their entire guidance for COVID. Oh, we're just going to flip it on its ear and act like nothing changed. You know, it's embarrassing.
And nothing new came about to have that. Exactly. Nothing new. It's all the same thing. And one of those things mean a lot. The fact that asymptomatic doesn't spread the virus, or it does in the case that it's very, very rare. That changes the whole game because there's no lockdowns, there's no mass testing. You know what I'm saying? All we have to do as a nation is have some leniency for workers, for teachers, and for people at school to say, if you're sick, stay at home, stay isolated, and then we'll worry about it. So if we had that leniency, we don't need mass testing, we don't have lockdowns, we don't have social distancing. It's a whole different ballgame, and there's nothing new. It's the WHO still has these tests from China that show that it's very, very, very rare that asymptomatic spread the virus. And this is something I got suspended on Twitter for. Shit got taken down. And here it is 2 years later. Are they going to give us 2 years of monetization back for all of us? I think you got about 4 years coming to you. You got about 5 years coming. I got 2 years coming. It's
bigger than that too. It's because it's not just that you're the one. I think you're referencing the 10 million person study, right? The 10 million people, and only 300 out of the entire thing were asymptomatic. But the best point on top of that is that then they found that none of them were transmissible on top of all of that. And that's because it's a no-brainer that respiratory problems do not spread without symptoms. And this is what even Fauci was saying before we got into COVID clown world, you know. But to your point, it's more than even that. I would argue it's the idea of saying that the guidance is no different for vaccinated versus unvaccinated. I'm going to go over this in my show today. I had this article where they broke down like what just changed. Let me walk you through it. And it's like watching them they're doing mental gymnastics to try to make this add up. You can see, you almost could feel in their writing that it's like they know this doesn't make sense anymore. It never did. But
why did they do it now then, T?
Well, I think it's because they're trying to, they've lost control. They've lost control of the narrative, just like they lost control of Ukraine. Now, I think they're rapidly trying to push this into the next argument. Let's wait for the bivalent. Like, it doesn't even, I think they're just hoping that we put this down and it's the whole Jordan Peterson clip, but where they just wait for you to get upset and they pause. They wait for you to get comfortable again and they come back later. I just don't think that they see that even their own people are being pushed away from their side, whatever that may be, because they are not there anymore. I mean, everything is showing the opposite, and all they're holding on to is that you just listen to them instead of look at everything else. It's like, that's not a very sustainable model. Even their own people are going, well, damn it, guys. Even the CDC study says that's not true. And so they just go, okay, fuck it, just turn it around and we'll downplay it. We'll act like it was a small change. And so we'll throw them, and then just eventually when there's something else, maybe they put something out there. I mean, people argue that. They put something real out there next time, and then suddenly there is real stuff. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I don't put anything past them, but I think that they've lost this.
Now it's about personal decisions and personal choices. Oh, thank you, all of a sudden. And the first one, too, is awful. The fact about no longer needing to isolate or quarantine or say this people dying alone, older people, and their siblings or their loved ones not being able to be with them at their time of death was a crime against fucking humanity.
The whole thing was.
This is one of the most saddest things. If you read nurses, all their logs and everything they went through, all their stories, it is heartbreaking. My Uncle Bobby, he died alone without his children around, and his children still have a hard time because they have no closure. This is like, just lingering with them because they didn't get to say goodbye to their father. This was a crime against humanity.
They broke people. I mean, and that's just one sliver of how horrific this whole thing was. But the bottom line is it comes down to the fact that they just admitted without saying it that the vaccine doesn't work. And we all know that. But if vaccinated people have no different guidance than unvaccinated people, you're literally proving, and I'll sort of say in that article I'll go through today, even more so the way they discuss it, it proves to you that at the very least, they don't think that you're in any different position at this point. How in the world do you not? Or the other part where the next day they remove that part from their website that talks about whether the spike protein or mRNA stays in your body or not. And so they just remove it, which means that at the very least that they don't know anymore. Like, it's so embarrassing to watch this. This is dangerous. I mean, and I think at the end of the day, they failed in maybe where they were trying to go, but did they? When they successfully got 50% of the population to put this crap in their body, what that's going to do, spike protein shedding, which we know is possible. I mean, this is ubiquitous at this point, like a glyphosate conversation. Maybe they got what they wanted out of this, but either way, it's like, we got to learn from this stuff, man. Like, we can't let this just happen again. Monkeypox is literally happening right now. I can't even believe that's actually coming up.
They got an emergency on it. So now they just once again, that gives powers to the executive branch to do whatever they want. HHS is going to determine where the money goes. It's the whole scam all over again. And let me tell you something else about COVID with the vaccine too. It's still lingering when it comes to being pushed for children at schools in states like California, where they're trying to make it 12 years old. I thought it was 14, Steve. No. It's 12 years old that they consent, and they're going to hide the information from their parents. They don't have
New York too.
New York, yeah. New York still, I think they're going through some of their health board regulations that they snuck in there. They're still fighting against them. There's some lawsuits going on with that. So, and Ecuador's got some shit going on. I just was talking to somebody from Ecuador where they're trying to, it's Lasso, the president there is trying to empty out all his vaccines, and he's talking to the private sector, trying to get them to force vaccinations onto their citizens. They're literally going door to door trying to get rid of this shit.
God, man. Yeah, I mean, it's just unreal to watch this play out. And the monkeypox thing is just amazing to me because it's like, to be clear, just to say this, is that, maybe there is something circulating. I don't think this is based on everything else we're seeing. I think at very least that this is just being capitalized on, whether it's really there, whether it's a real thing, or they're just, that there are vaccine side effects that are being labeled this, that there are situations where they're claiming it's asymptomatic, which has never happened before. I mean, there's so many things that it's the same situation all over again. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take precaution, be safe, be clean. Those are things that you should always do any point in your life, just so that's clear. It's not always like it's fake. They're all lying to you. I don't know that. I don't know. And honest people would say that. But we have to acknowledge how the same game is being played, how they're capitalizing on this to drive in the same agenda and the same control, whether or not it's real. And that's the biggest point. Because what happens is we get to a point to where they will frame it as, so what, we shouldn't care about any problem that arises? Like, you guys, any new discussion of illness is being called fake news. And now we're back in that same wheel where any shooting is a hoax right out of the gate before we even know. And it's like, maybe I'm never dismissing any of these possibilities, but you see how dangerous that is. It's like we're falling back into that kind of trap, and objectivity all the time, Yeah,
and that's, I don't know. That's one of the things that makes geopolitical conversations with people who have just such a vested interest in either the wholesale destruction of the West or what they perceive to be Western ideology, that it doesn't matter what any other government is doing to their people.
Mm-hmm, right.
Because by default, the West is and will always be worse. It's the origin of all the bad ever in the world, even though it's by far the youngest civilization. There was never any bad before that. Everyone lived happy and free. There was no slavery. There was no misogyny. Everyone had multiple pronouns. It was beautiful. It was. and then white people came along and fucked it all up.
Overcompensation for sure.
And it's like, look, if you want what's bad about the West to stop, we know how. We have a central banking cartel that has a stranglehold on the vast majority of the decisions that get made at the geopolitical level, at the financial level, and then all of that just sort of avalanches downward onto all of us.
Right. Right. Well, if I could just to your point you made first, is that it's you're absolutely right, and this is the same kind of point we were making before. Is this it's obviously overcompensation. Now, I need to make clear that I think, in my opinion, at the very least, and I don't think this is even hard to grasp if you're being objective and looking at the history of this government. It's impossible to look at right now and compare the United States government, the actions they've done around the world, with literally any other government in existence right now. And I'm not talking about previous years. I'm saying, like, since the existence of the United States to now, in that time period, it's obvious that the U.S. government is doing more damage and more terrible things around the world than literally anybody else. You just can't ignore that. But that does not then overcome, that we have to acknowledge the history of China or the UK or any other examples of the past and what they've done. No, there's nobody innocent here. That's why I always argue that these governments are the problem, which, again, that's, light years down the conversation for most people. But but we need to acknowledge what is happening with this government. But I agree. By the way, it's not all of it, all simultaneous. It's like, there's a lot of good people in this country, the people, first of all. And I would even argue there's people in leadership positions that maybe have some, positive outlooks that may want to change things. That's the heart it's going to be hard to get me on that side of it. I'm very jaded. It's hard for you to believe anybody in leadership positions are actually leaders at all. But regardless, your point's very important, Steve, because we can't then just be like, that's what kind of happens in a lot of people's conversations about, like, where, if you think the U.S. government's doing bad, therefore China's the good guy. And that's kind of your point you made earlier. It's like, why would you even assume why would you assume that's what I think? It's like, it's not, you voted for Trump, therefore you hate Clinton, or you voted for Clinton, therefore you hate Trump. It's like, that's when that really was an obvious binary thing where so you voted for her. No, it's like, we got to stop doing that.
I think that Thomas Massey is one of those guys. Maybe I don't know. When people say, "Well, do you think anybody in Congress is not bought and paid off for?" It's like, at one point, obviously, I thought Tulsi was. I'm very questionable.
That's a good example. She kind of took me too, man. And I
questionable
think
now, though.
Playing the game.
Questionable now.
Well, I think my point is that they're all questionable. I don't believe. I've been even Tulsi, like I said, I was like, look, if she pans out, I genuinely believe if she is what she seems to be, she would be one of the best people. And then very clearly, I think that even if she thought it was the right choice, she fell back in and supported somebody like Clinton. It's embarrassing to watch them play that politics game. But I don't trust any of them. I never will. I'll consider, like, a Massey. I'm like, man, he's calling this stuff out. Good for him. Yeah. But it's about the longevity, the continuity of their choices, and whether or not they vote. I don't think any of them prove that out. I think they're always willing to take one for this so they can do that. And I think you fail. The moment you start doing that is when you fail, because it's a slippery slope. The line ends up light years away from you down the line. Next thing you know, you're voting down things that are very important to make sure you get your bill in for your people. And it's a game, and it's easily abused by the people above.
Yeah. Well, okay, but to put it back into a geopolitical wheelhouse, I actually had someone tell me that the reason that Putin has been in power for 40 years now, and the reason that Xi has been in power for 30 or 40 years now,
or Netanyahu,
is because people recognize a good leader when they see one. And that any authoritarian measures that have been taken by either of those governments have strictly only been in retaliation to Western interference. And if the West were to just go away, then there would be no need to have these authoritarian measures.
Okay.
And I don't buy that.
I gotta push back a little bit on this, because I've been down to the global South. When they got a leader they feel is strong and they trust, they want him to stay there. Morales was one of those situations. Why in Bolivia, where there was a lot of questions like, listen, if you run again, they're going to try to coup you. But they wanted him to run again. The people like him, the people like Ortega down there, the people like Maduro. I mean, Maduro's a little bit of a different situation. I think he's got more opposition around around there. But a lot of these leaders, Assad, what I'm saying? If he's a strong leader that stands up to the West,
they're wildly popular. You can't deny that.
Yeah.
They're popular with their people. And I do argue it's because they do a lot of things that are good. Like, look at example like Libya. and Gaddafi, right?
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't ignore the reality of the situation. Highest quality of life, free education, free healthcare. I mean, these are real facts that were even then were shouted down as ridiculous, but we now know, of course, it's always how that works. They're very real, and that was the situation. And it was more about the politics than anything else. Of course, it's not a surprise. So they assassinated this person, right? We need to know this reality. But does that mean that he wasn't doing things to benefit himself at the expense of people in some cases? I don't believe any government's capable of it. That's just my jaded opinion. But as I said, the continuity of it, if you can watch out an entire administration and every action's taken and everything I agree with, then you can say, well, there you go. There's an example of that. But it's hard for me to cross that line because of how many times we've seen it in the past. But to address Steve's point, the idea that that's the only reason it's there. I mean, is it possible? Sure. I mean, it's logically, it connects because there's so much happening that's coming from one side, but I just don't buy that. I don't buy that that's the only reason. I don't buy that it makes sense to be authoritarian in any regard, whether or not it's like, you don't need to be authoritarian in your people, with your people in your country to stop what they're doing foreign policy wise. I mean, we have look, there's plenty of actions that you can see these countries have taken throughout the history, like kicking out groups like NIAID or what's the other one? These Trojan horse fake humanitarian non-governmental organizations that commit regime change. Like, yes, get rid of them. And they'll call you
USAID.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I'm stuck in COVID land. I said down and yes, USA, excuse me.
I know who you meant. We know who you meant.
But so the point being is that they'll call you a bad person for kicking out the aid groups, but it's obviously the right choice because they're not really honest, from the core point of it. But by and large, you don't need to do things to your people. But at the same time, like for instance, take Assad, for example. There's a lot of examples of things that have taken place in that country, like the protest itself. They still point at that we can prove was coaxed by the U.S. government and where they were committing, like say, or Ukraine, which we can prove that their people shot someone and they blame the other side. There is a lot of that happening. Now, does that mean that they're not committing their own problems? I don't know, but I think that there's a valid point to be made in that regard. But to argue that they're not doing their own things, I just think that's ridiculous. There's plenty of people in their country that would stand up and speak out about them. Now, is that all completely coaxed by the U.S. government? Certainly possible. I just don't believe that. Like, there's plenty of Syrians that just disagree with Assad. This comes down to letting these countries do their own thing. And if all they're going to do is scream that they're terrorists, and there's with no verification, well, they're bad people, so we have to do this, and we're fighting for those same people, and then they go in and destroy those people's lives. That's pure evil, in my opinion. You can't go in and act like you're fighting for people and then destroy those people's lives. Look at what's happening in Ukraine. We are literally funding an openly fascist, openly Nazi entity, and they are murdering people in real time, and they're going, la, 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 I don't see it because narrative. That's disgusting. I mean, like core value disgusting. And here's Russia coming in and arguably doing something to stop it. Is that his whole purpose, their purpose? I don't buy that. There's probably more involved, but I believe there's a level of this, last point on this, where I've said this for a long time, that they play the good guy because it's obviously politically advantageous for them. I mean, if you have this person over here wielding all sorts of terrible things and doing all sorts of bad things, and it's obvious and their clumsy narratives don't cover it up, if you step into that field and act like the one being honest and good and trying to fight, well, it's going to work wonders for you. And I think that's why you get that effect where people in this country go, whoa, these all good. They're the best people alive because look at what they're doing, and it's probably just a means to an end. Now, maybe I'm jaded, like I said, but I think that's honest take because we don't really know at the end of the day.
I think when you're facing the U.S. military and the empire, and the fact is that, these are people who, can kill you, can bomb you, can drone you. You just go and you go to the one you think is the best general who's going to, literally, I think that, Ortega is in power because he is a Sandinista, freedom fighter. He was a general, whatever ranks they have over there. But that is why it seems like America is the reason why these people are still in power. And that natural process of allowing new rulers or new leaders to come in is sometimes pushed away or jaded. I mean,
mm-hmm. Well,
I think Castro with Cuba, right? Like he felt like that he couldn't leave because of the U.S. empire, that had he stepped out, the U.S. would be right back in there.
Right. Exactly. And does that then justify authoritarian actions, to stop these things from happening? These are lines that we like. Again, though, the main point comes back to it's none of our damn business for this country and this government to insert itself into other people's politics. But then we see these actions like Evo Morales, where MIT study, you can prove these things. They chose to remove him because he didn't fit their corporate agenda. Is that good? I mean, he wasn't again, not to say good and bad. This whole binary thing is kind of frustrating because it's hard. That's not that simple. But the people wanted him there. That's all that matters. And that's easy to prove. The election was clear, and then they proved the election wasn't manipulated. And then they put in a military junta, and the very OAS group that's arguing about democracy just suddenly gets super quiet. Yeah, let's fight for democracy. And then when they take it by force, we go, oh, quiet. We don't care now. You know, it's so obvious how controlled this stuff is, and it has nothing to do with whether he was hurting his people or not.
Yeah. You got to see us when we're in the global south and we see somebody with that OAS vest. We're like, all right, let's go fuck with them. Let's go. Hey, so you're an election observer, huh? Yeah.
It's all about independent ones, you know, like other countries sending like independent people to be there just to stand by and observe, you know, and like that's like that happened in Venezuela. There was like 100 election observers from many countries and they still called it fake, you know. But have you guys seen that?
Nicaragua too. Yeah,
right. It's every time, you know, but that then doesn't mean that we're saying those countries aren't rife with their own problems, you know. But the point is the US government is doing that for their own interests, not for your interest, not national security, for, you know, going back to the, you know, Costa, going back to, you know, fruit companies being protected in South America. That's what this is still really about, whether it's corporate or Great Reset or not. Yeah. But have you guys seen that clip of in Ukraine of people going in the elevator and there's a huge poster of Zelensky in the elevator? And it's just one after another. These people are like, fuck, you know, like fake punching him and stuff. And like, you know, we are constantly being bombarded with an illusion from our government about what's really going on in these countries. Like we saw with Syria. And as we get further and further away, like Libya, these things fall apart. And it becomes very clear what the real motive was, but we're so far away from it that it doesn't matter anymore, you know? But in Ukraine's case, I think people are starting to see it in real time.
I hope so.
Me too. Maybe it's wishful thinking, but I think there's a reason they drop it.
We can always wish. We can always wish, Ryan. So, what do you have next, Commandante Poikinen?
Well, if I can interject something, before we go to another topic, I thought you guys would really enjoy this. There's a clip. Am I able to screen share a clip?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to grab a little more hot coffee. You good? All right.
Yeah, you're going to like this. So I'm blanking on her name all of a sudden. Hold on, I think I've got the tweet up still. Shoot, was it Shiva? I forget her name. You'll probably remember her, Steve. She's very, very popular. I played her before. She's the one in India that's constantly fighting against GMOs and everything. And she has this really great. Yes. She has this really great speech right here about, you know, the history, but where we need to go now. And just to give you the quote that she said that I really loved. She says, "Growing your own food is the freedom of today."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, yes, we need to stop. Like, how about we just get rid of the whole political thing in general to start focusing inward on ourselves and self-responsibility?
Absolutely.
Right. So check this out. You guys will love this. Oh, he's got to do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think the erasure of memory is intentional. And that's why everywhere history is being rewritten. That's why before it is rewritten to make us forget, we must connect. Yeah, that's what I did in India. I worked with the farmers to remember that 1857 revolt against the East India Company, which shut the East India Company down, was a bread revolt. You know, farmers were being killed for not paying the taxes that were killing them. And so the farmers said, we'll reclaim our bread and our freedom. And because they were being arrested and killed, when they talked, they started to give bread to each other. And that's how the movement spread. When we had to launch the movement for seed freedom, I went back to Gandhi and his spinning wheel. He said there was an empire of cotton where we were being impoverished, our farmers were dying. What did we do? We started to spin our own cloth. And I said, growing your own seed, growing your own food today is the freedom of today. And those who say these are conspiracy, well, just look at the rules of WTO and globalized free trade. Who wrote the intellectual property agreement of WTO? Monsanto, they admitted it. Who wrote the agreement on agriculture that's destroyed all the self-reliance and food sovereignty of people? You know, everyone's talking about the Ukraine war and Russia. But the reason African countries are hungry is because their ability to produce their food was destroyed by the right to dump by Cargill. Cargill wrote the agreement on agriculture. And then the junk food industry, the Pepsis and Cokes and Nestle's, wrote the sanitary and phytosanitary agreement and created the Codex Alimentarius to shut down healthy food and pushed the food that gave us illnesses, 75% chronic diseases. This is not a conspiracy. There is evidence that the corporations wrote the rules, then it created the billionaires. Now the billionaires rule the world.
Man. It's a great clip. Aside from the fact they're sitting 6 feet apart, but
Yeah. And he's got a bad camera angle on him. Like, I don't know, like whoever the producers of this.
It's to cover up his copy of Yuval Harari's book.
Oh.
But it's a great clip, though, regardless of whether, it's just, we need this so desperately today. This idea that we need to take self-responsibility and not rely on them to give us, like the whole food supply. Look at the history. It's over and over and over again. These powerful people are well aware of what the choke points are and how they can manipulate us into the next thing they're building. In this case, the Great Reset, and it's very transparent. I mean, what do you guys think of it?
We've said for a really, really, really long time on Slow News Day that the job of the actual independent media isn't just to combat the rewriting of history, like she's talking about, the rewriting of real time, which is what takes place at an alarming rate. And it's so very, very true. I was joking yesterday that we don't need the Great Awakening, but we actually need like a remembering. We've already done all the things that we need to do to get away from these systems of control. We just have to remember that we've done them and then communicate with each other. We can actually do this thing. It's achievable. It may not be anything that like I personally get to see, but that's not an overriding concern.
Yeah. I think it's really both. I think it's both an awakening and a remembering. Like obviously the stuff that we need to remember that's in black and white, that it's there. It's very documented. We just have to remember it, but the awakening, I think, is more about like the WEF and all these other one global governance that's behind the scenes.
That's why I put the voice on it, because it's actually like a whole psyop. The Great Awakening is a whole avenue of capture for people.
That's like the QAnon thing, right?
The Great Awakening, isn't that more about understanding like the WEF?
It's a total Q fucking op.
Okay, because
there's they got documentaries out, they got fucking graphics from Langley, there's Jesus and Trump.
I think people are using that term Great Awakening wrong then too as well. So,
well, I mean, let's be clear. The term itself that Steve was referencing is definitely a QAnon argument, but just to take it out of that and just use the words and what they mean, the idea that there's a massive grouping of people awakening these days, that's not incorrect, but just in the sense of those terms being used, it obviously relates to QAnon. And when they say that in that circle, all they mean is their circle awakening to what they're pushing about Trump saving the world. And, that's what that means in that context. But so I argue the same thing in different.
Yeah, I got you.
I argue different things, though. That people are waking up left and right now, and that's not even how I meant that. All over the place, in all contexts, people are truly seeing through this, and I think that's why they're trying to rush in all this so fast.
I think when it comes to the food conversation and what we've been talking about, taking back our sovereignty by producing our own food again, because, as explained on this show, with the destroying of the facilities as far as, and the culling of the chickens and all this, what's going on is they're trying to ultimately control us by controlling their food, right? The Bill Gates buying up land, geoengineering, the whole 9 yards, destroy it, buy it pennies on the dollar. That's an interesting conversation. We're getting ready to go to Brazil, the Convo Couch, to observe the elections. But when you go to do these things, you usually pick about 2 or 3 different areas in which you can learn more about, the Afro-Indigenous community in the favelas and how they're being treated, what's going on in the Amazon. But I'm trying to plug into this whole agricultural, soil fertilizer thing that, I've been learning a lot. Steve's got a lot of knowledge when it comes to these things about how the soil works. But that's an interesting argument, because, when you see Modi right now and people talk about how he let Monsanto in and how he used these fertilizers to really, what they said is feed his people, industrialize that country. The first thing Modi did when he got in was build a bunch of toilet bowls, for people to shit. There wasn't toilet bowls in India. So, I mean, there is an argument out there right now that a lot of people are saying, like when we had Iverson on and me and Kim talk about it, the ESGs and whatnot, it's like, I'm not going to tell a country that they can't use these type of fertilizers or whatever they want to do to produce these crops they need to produce to feed their people. So, I mean, I think it's entering into this feast or famine kind of argument where it's no ESGs whatsoever. But go ahead and use these fertilizers, frack the hell out of the country, produce our own oil and gas, and who cares what it does to the planet? There's no conversation in the middle about this right now. And that to me is a scary thing too as well.
I agree, but there's also another unspoken conversation that I think is the most important, though it's within all of that, which is the fact that we shouldn't just make it a binary choice about whether or not to use Monsanto. Like, there's a huge conversation to be had about whether, like, they're all pushing right now the idea of getting rid of these synthetic fertilizers versus like this whole great reset green direction. The point is, and I'm not sure, again, I'm not wildly well versed on this in regard to, you know, the science behind them, but the argument goes that to remove those will dramatically reduce what can be produced. That the fact that they use these synthetic versions or so on are the reason that they can produce certain amounts of food, and therefore this is an effort to, in its own way, reduce the amount that can be produced while they're shutting down farms. So it's an interesting part of that. But then it comes into the idea of whether or not those are safe and whether Monsanto's products are even something we should even be talking about. You know, like, I don't even know why they're even in existence anymore with all the stuff that they would have done or been caught doing or covering up. But I think, again, to our point from before, it comes down to the choices of these individual countries and whether that's what the people of those countries actually want. You know, because I would argue to remove the governments from the conversation and all the political and corporate media BS over all of it is the people would rather go back to doing their own thing individually, and how, you know, like the idea of like the Dutch farmers and letting them do what they're doing. They want to be farming, let them farm, let them sell to their own people. Let there be a community, you know, real person to person kind of thing. And if you want to sell to grocery stores and so on, do that too. But the government dictating how that can go, I think that's where the problem begins. You know, whether they meant to do good in the beginning or not, you know, it's kind of irrelevant at this point.
Well, everybody talks about Trump, how he didn't start any new wars, but we obviously like to point out the fact. Well, we like to point out the fact that you have regime change in Bolivia through way of Marco Rubio, and I'm pretty sure that the administration knew something about it. I can't prove that, but there was things going on behind the scenes. They tried to whack Maduro several times. They went after Ortega. What I'm saying? So his whole policy
Syria continued,
in Latin America,
Brazil,
America, terrible.
It's willful
Brazil's
ignorant.
another one.
Myanmar,
but people don't talk about Western Sahara. They don't talk about it enough. And that is all about phosphate right there. Controlling that, in which the fertilizer, what they need, whatnot. The majority comes from Morocco and Western Sahara, and nobody talks about it. That the fact that Israel and the United States went into some type of agreement or recognition of Morocco claiming Western Sahara territory. They recognize it. Nobody talked about it, whatnot. And there's a whole, the Polisario Front, which is claiming to be the leadership of Western Sahara, has claims to that territory, is fighting behind the scenes. And there's so many ramifications going on. Algeria has been pulled into it. Spain has been pulled into this whole situation. But
can I go ahead and assume they call them terrorists?
Phosphate. What's that?
Can I go ahead and assume they call them terrorists, and that's kind of the justification for why they're present? I mean, that's a big surprise.
Yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard getting on a C-130 anytime soon to
this guy over here.
Go with a National Guard unit for, support.
Russell Brand.
Tulsi Gabbard. Dangerous Islamist.
But to your point, though, I mean, what's frustrating, though, is that these things happened largely and continue to happen under Trump, under any administration. But see, what you said there is what I want to make a point about is I don't know if the administration was aware of it. So now we start making these differentiations in Trump's administration. So why don't we go look back and say, well, during Obama's administration, or even time before, like, just because they happened during his administration, we say they were Obama's wars. Now, is that the case? I agree. I think they were. But I also think that Trump is well aware of all the things that were happening that they are a part of. But it was a Democrat that did this. Like, all of a sudden it becomes two governments when you want to see it differently during people's administrations that you want to support. No, that wasn't Obama, it was this. It's like, the point is that it's during their administration, and if it's actions they're involved with or check off on or aware of, it's the same point. But the reality is, whether or not you started new wars, which, by the way, is a little bit more difficult when most of the wars have already began in all these countries around the world, but that they're involved in these, like Syria, for example, and continuing to occupy steel and burn wheat. And these things happened during Trump's administration. You can't pretend like just because you didn't start new ones doesn't make them just as problematic. But then they play the game where it's like, well, you can't just pull out of the war. Yeah, you really can. And it's just that really simple. Right? Yeah, exactly.
He should have done it in Afghanistan, that he waited to the last second, Johnny on the spot. I don't even think the people that he pulled out of Somalia made it to American soil by the time Joe Biden got in there and go, send them back. Like, I don't even know if that happened. And the fact that he amped up the bombing, we know this in Afghanistan. And yeah, it is what it is. I guess with Trump, though, I just kind of have that like little caveat to say, Well, maybe he didn't know, but it tells you who's running things behind the scenes. Maybe it's this. The CIA. How much do they run of our foreign policy? We all need to understand this right now about how much entrenched they are. So
absolutely agree. That's a great point. And maybe but the point is, if that's the case with him, it's the same point with every other president before that, right? So it has to be the same equal argument that there is either as culpable or equally not, depending on how we're looking at it, right? It's like, but that changes depending on who's in power and which side's talking about it, which is our childish preschool level of politics that we deal with in this country. But what's frustrating, though, to go back to your point about the fertilizer and all this, is that you have to see the line between all of them. Taking action, whether they were even aware of what they were doing in the time, that all lead to where we are right now, and the control of these things and the way it's happening. It's really, or pointing to Trump coming out with Klaus Schwab, he's doing a really great job. And it's like, no, he says that about everybody. And it's like all their equivocations. This is all clearly kind of a coordinated thing, guys. And I just think we need to see that. And it's so crazy alarming how it's happening in such real time while they're still blaming Putin, like in a really dumb way, to be like, no, that's Putin did that. And it's like, while they're over here going, we're doing this for your benefit. But no, when you point out the side effects of that, it's Putin's fault. They're all involved in this.
The Inflation Reduction Act. Does it reduce inflation? No more questions.
Yeah. Push it away. By the way, I sent that clip you sent us of Trump coming in there. Klaus is doing a great job. By the way, China, let me go. But, and that speech there that day, he was going, the world does not belong to globalists anymore.
Of course.
It belongs, so from what he said at that same speech, he said the opposite from when he first came in.
Right. But
that's the whole thing. Everybody will say, nope, TLAV, you're wrong. He's playing possum.
Here's what's funny. When I've shared that clip, I'm not saying game over, proof, this is everything, which is what they're doing on the other side of that. I'm going, well, that's interesting. Look at what he said right there. And then, their hair sets on fire and they burn. The point is, why is that one a lie, but the other one's true? Who knows? Did you speak to him? Did you ask his opinion? And even then, do you know he didn't lie then? The point is, you're choosing to take one at face value and ignore the other. That's the game they always play. Nope, that one didn't mean anything. This one means everything. It's the same stuff I'm always talking about. The point is, he said it.
And says that Operation Warp Speed is my legacy. that bringing these big, beautiful vaccines into your bodies is the most important thing that my base, ever did in your entire lives. Pat yourselves on the back. You made this happen. They go, yeah, well, he's got to say that.
40 chess. Yeah, it's a game. He's trying to trap the Democrats to give them a rope to hang themselves with. And, I could rattle off the 14 things they say to everything you point out right now if we wanted to. But it's embarrassing. But to be clear, we're focusing on the one side. You can seem that, it's not hard to see all the same childish, subjective, personal ignorance kind of things on the left. It's almost more obvious today, but
they want you to believe that 63-year-old Malcolm Nance is on the front lines fighting for the freedom of the Ukrainian people, like
inappropriately holding his gun, right?
Yeah. You
know how he held the gun? There was one dude a friend of ours who took a picture, and instead of the gun, he held the dildo, and he's like, "I'm ready," like the same thing. That Malcolm Nance. I'm done. What did he say? I'm done with watching. Or
I had a dab torch that I was holding up for that one.
I saw that. Let's see.
Malcolm, I'm down.
Yeah, God, I wanted a semolina loaf, Italian bread. Let's go.
It's just to quote Steve here. We live in a fucking cartoon. It really is that silly, and that's kind of that joke we always make about that. What's funny enough, and this is how these things get co-opted, is that's where the term "awake" was really brought into this discussion long before it was a left thing, about the fact that people, it really is sort of an awakening thing, where you're going like, because the moment you see it and really acknowledge how ridiculously dumbed down and childish and subjective and emotional the corporate media is, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. It's like watching a cartoon. It's clumsy and it's ridiculous, and we all know what we're talking about. But the person that still thinks it's they're good people and they really care about it, you can't. They're still in the cult, right? You can't see past it. But the point is, when you go past that, it's an awakening. You start questioning other things. And that's why I think the QAnon and the woke, they're grabbing that in every way they can to make it mean nothing even remotely what we were talking about. That's how that always works.
Could you please grab the shipping container of EMP's clip? This is something that I don't know if you've seen this or not yet, Ryan. I know you probably got to bounce here before too long. Before that happens,
how much time do you have, by the way?
I gotta
Good.
Well,
Go
let's
ahead, Steve. Yeah.
run the thing.
Yeah.
I have plenty of time. I'm probably gonna take off in a little bit here, but yeah, I've got no set time, so let's go.
Yeah, we got and then we have John Bush coming in about 35 minutes or something like that.
Yeah. I want to get after we get to this, I want to get TLAV's opinion about the Twitter new rules and stuff. So.
Oh, right.
Let's pull this real quick though. I can't, you guys.
What's wrong?
So you guys know this is fake, right?
The Boston Dynamics thing is fake.
Well, it's not Boston. It says there's groups that put these fake ones out.
Okay. Oh, Bosstown Dynamics.
This is an old one.
Bosstown Dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah, this is very old.
Yeah, this is but the point is, these things exist. But these videos they make about them where they're doing things like this, they're just kind of meant to be parodies.
It's revelation of the message, Ryan.
Right.
All right.
It's almost, what's funny is it's almost meant to be like create a sentiment where you're abusing them. Where it's like you're like, oh, the AI and robots need rights. Like there's people that have even made that argument already.
Yes, they do.
It's interesting, but it's still so people know those things are real. I mean, those robots, the dogs, those things are very real. And I argue what they're even more so doing there is probably dramatically downplaying how alarming they actually are and what they can really do. That's usually how that goes, but that's just a guess.
Well, we have gone through the clip of the actual like MIT robotics school releases of where they've been up to and the advancements in robotics. So they got the one that can run like 38 miles an hour, and they got the ones that open doors, and they get all kinds of stuff. It's not okay.
Carry weapons and crowd control devices and all these things that are very, very probably already being built and maybe already used we don't know about. That's how this tends to go. When we're seeing it presented, they've already got it locked in. That's usually how this goes. It's frustrating.
Let's grab really quick, because I know that you don't have any set time, but I don't want to take too long. Twitter's new midterm rules that you sent me the other day. And I just want to get your initial thought on this, because really, to tell you the truth, at the end of the day, what this is really about. I
think it's in the doc, Connor.
I did. I put it in the doc.
It's at the bottom.
It's on the bottom.
Yeah.
If you go, keep going up a little bit. Up right there. At the end of the day, and everything that's out there, I think what this is really about. And it's so crazy because I'm looking at the TV today. I'm looking at the newspaper. I'm a newspaper guy. TLAV, I ain't got to tell you that. They're like now trying to keep you distracted from actual election reform or understanding the rules about elections by going after people like Lindsey Graham for his role in Georgia when he's from South Carolina. They're going to subpoena Giuliani now for interference in Georgia.
And this is about Trump's election still,
this
right?
This is Trump's election. This is what they're looking at. And this is what they're talking about, because people seem to forget. January 6th, J6 was a Stop the Steal rally. It was about the elections. And Trump's speech on the ellipse was about each state in which he was contesting and why he thought it was unfair. It was a very boring speech. It's stuff we had heard for the month leading up to this and whatnot. But a lot of people forget about this. Now, what these new rules are about, and this is my personal opinion, is about making sure they stop any collection of evidence in real time. Now that people have kind of caught on to what's going on, they understand what's going on. All right, now 2,000 Mules did point out the fact that people are stuffing boxes. So now you're going to have more eyes on that, more cameras, whatnot.
Happening. Yeah.
What they want to stop right here, especially from what happened last election in 2020, is real-time crimes or election fraud going and taking place. That's what these new rules are all about.
I agree. Well, just so it's clear, what 2,200 mules, 2,200, 200?
2,000 or 200?
2,000?
I think it's 2,000.
That's weird that we can't remember. But the documentary talking about it, it's obviously it seems pretty partisan, but the point is that it happens on all sides. And that's been proven over and over and over a million different times, 1,000 different ways. And we just can't really collectively grab it, which usually is a partisan thing, I would argue, stopping us from seeing it. But the point is, it's always been there. From Clint Curtis testimony to always, we know this stuff happens all over the place. What's interesting to me, though, before we even get into the new rules, because it's really crazy, the preemptive control or the pre-bunks and the things we're talking about, but that what's interesting is you can see the left arguing this of Trump being elected. Oh, Russia, they did this or they cheated and they colluded, and that's totally acceptable. These disgustingly stupid contradictions, double standards are everywhere. But what's interesting is how they took it to another, they went further with it. They wanted to investigate. And the point is, had they done the exact same things, they would act like it's justified. And the point is with Trump, can we not argue that, first of all, knowing that they absolutely did cheat, but again, it's always happening. The Republicans did it too. We need to see that. That's the game they play. But the point is, if it was, and we know that it was manipulated, his actions are justified to stand up and try to challenge this. Or let's even put it this way. Let's say you don't know and you have questions. Is there not a process to go through to try to say, wait a minute, like look at all the recounts that happened with Bush and the earlier discussion there where there was all these different recounts. Why isn't it okay for Trump's administration to stand up and start making arguments about this, even especially if they truly believe it, even if they end up being wrong? The idea that you're framing it from the impetus as inherently dishonest is an opinion. That's they're putting that on them and maybe it is, but don't they have a right to go through that process, like to go through these? And my point I keep saying is that if they truly believe that happened, why wouldn't you stop short? Why would you stop short of going to these places and trying to prove that they cheated? There's leeway that should be given in this, and even legal process that they're acting like is some sort of treasonous act because they don't want that to be possible, which goes to your point. Now we're at a point where they're using that justification, sort of like the January 6th argument. They're now going to create rules which stop you from ever being able to find out, which, by the way, works well for both sides as we go into the controlled elections, right?
Well, moving forward, like I'll be, I haven't got it. I'm not confirmed, but I'll probably be talking at a big election rally on a weekend in Florida in about a month. And I'm going to talk about the 6 principles of elections that we need moving forward. But when I do talk about 2020, my personal theory, and this is just a theory because we don't have the mechanisms in which we can go in and look at these things, look at these elections. We don't have transparency. We don't have fair audits. They don't have to prove to us, the people, that our democracy is actually a true democracy. But my personal theory is that the Democrats wouldn't have been able to pull this off without the help of the Republicans, right? They didn't get any coattails on the situation. And that was one of the things about 2000 Mules. It was very partisan. At the very end, it was like, okay, we need to put cameras on these drop boxes and we need to go after the Democrats. It was really scary because they are playing that game and both sides is doing this to each other. They're just blaming each other when they say things like, we need to get rid of Dominion. Dominion's awful. It's not Dominion that's awful. It's proprietary software. ES&S and Smartmatic have more situations, more cases of wrongdoing than Dominion alone. So the conversation is not where it needs to be, and we need to get there with this conversation. Like you said, this isn't a partisan issue. This is both sides taking, playing it to their advantage so they can win these elections.
But that's the problem, though, is that's where it stops short. And because you get these people motivated to a point to where everything's going to change, but it stops the moment that you try to have any kind of coordination with the other side. Where how about we all just realize that your government is fucking with you and realize that we need to come together to acknowledge that, and that's the problem is we don't go after the Democrat. It's to your point. I did an entirely deep, I think it was 3 shows in a row where I was going deep into the voting machines and I think there's even a 4th one that I can't remember off the top of my head, but you're right though. The ones Dominion is ridiculous. I mean, there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence that but to your point, it's the same with those and even worse, the history of them, how they're able to be manipulated, how the history shows they've been manipulated, but nobody cares at the end of the day because they want that to be the case, whether that's because they want to acknowledge or argue that we should reimagine how this all works, or that's always in the back of my mind right now. This kind of leading up the justification for why we need to change it all based on some new idea in the new world and everything. But also because it's just, this is how politics works in this country. They cheat to a certain degree, and it's interesting when they choose to point at somebody. Like a Trump, for example. Why? I don't know. But it's
when you have these conversations, it's hard enough to get people to agree that both sides are guilty of election rigging. But then it's even harder to get them to agree that the system by which they're openly rigging exists to perpetuate itself. Mm-hmm. And that what your input into that system is is incredibly minimal, if not non-existent, as long as the sole purpose of that system is self-perpetuation and getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's a conversation that has to be had about why this particular centralized criminal bureaucracy is in fact the thing that has to be preserved at all costs, when it's the overriding factor for the vast majority of misery, not just at home, but abroad.
Exactly. I mean, and the problem is that we act like there's nothing else. And you've seen that meme with the Aztecs. There's two Aztec guys sitting there and they're looking up at the guy, like cutting the guy's heart out. And they're like, it's not perfect, but it's the best system we got. That's exactly where we are. I've even just heard somebody making that same tired argument again, leading up to the elections, going, well, democracy is not perfect, but the best system that's ever been created. And it's like, even if you agree with that, it's like, that's just a silly argument, because that stops you from wanting to try something else or change, you know? But yeah, it's, all this ties back to a much larger problem. And you could even argue, like, for those listening that are Republicans that think we're crazy, is like, it's certainly possible that the Republican Party, whatever that means, is altruistic and they're only cheating because they can see that they're cheating, and so they have to be able to compete. You know, sure, that's possible, but why is that okay with you? You know, it's like, it ultimately ends up where it's a self-perpetuating problem, like Steve's talking about, and you just fall into it, and it's a never-ending abyss, and they never come back.
Well, and that's the exact same justification for authoritarian regimes cracking down on their own citizens, because the big bad West is out there.
Right.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I think, though, it's kind of funny. My experiences going out there, that the left and the progressives, they're more about like, well, they're cheating, so we got to cheat too kind of mentality. Whereas if the right, they're very much like, you know, they got this like pro football mindset. We want to win fair and square, just as long as the referee is okay. We want to win fair and square. But they have this attitude because they feel that if it was fair this time, they would have won. You know what I'm saying? And I just use this whole movement right now as camouflage to get in there. You know, the fact that, you know, a lot of people are looking at me and they're saying, look, this is a lefty over here that even says the election system is not good. Let's listen to him. You know what I'm saying? But I'm using that as camouflage to get in there to show people that, hey, man, why are we okay with this system? Like you just said, why are we okay with this system? I go over to third world countries and I see them do it in one day with results that night, transparent, trackable, and open to the public. So why can't we do it too?
You just snitched yourself out, though, as a plant on your own.
The people who are going to be at this event are not watching our show yet. We'll get them over here.
No, but yeah, there's a lot of other possible discussions to be had. And, you know, this is the problem that always happens when, just because you can, it's the first step always is pointing out that we have a problem. We all need to acknowledge that we have a problem first. Yes. That's the first step to solving anything. But the problem is that's because people are able to point out the problem. The next argument for someone that doesn't want to see that, they haven't taken step one yet, is to go, well, what do we do then? That's like, look, why do I need to be the one to have the grand solution? We all just need to acknowledge, and I do have plenty of arguments that can be made. You know, there's paper ballots, people argue, is that go back to that kind of thing, which I still argue is just as manipulatable. Like, here's one that's super taboo today, and I'm not even saying we should do this. I've become much more concerned about where that seems to be going and whether this technology is what it seems and so on. But the argument goes that something like blockchain technology could be used in a way that could be unalterable. Absolutely. But is that even true? It's like, I don't even know anymore. It's like the way it seems like that everything go in that direction is alarming to me. And I'm almost inherently wanting to push back in every possible way. But I do know that these things can be used in ways that can fight back against the same system. So, you know, I asked, like, for instance, why these ledgers wouldn't have been used for like tallying up spending, like the Department of Defense. Well, that's because if it is inalterable, that's, you know, the way any average citizen could just go look at the DoD spending that day and look at the breakdown, they would never allow that. And it's the same idea. I would argue they would have done it by now if it was easier to use to manipulate you, but that foregone conclusion is never always exactly, you know, there could be other reasons. But my point is that there's other things we could be doing. The system now is literally been built to be manipulated. I mean, that's
absolutely.
Like, I point out things like gerrymandering and these different small versions of it, how they can alter things to suit their, you know, agenda. Those are the public things, you know,
fractional voting,
fraction magic. Yeah. Well, that's one of my principles of election is no proprietary software whatsoever. No proprietary software whatsoever. So I think it should be public counting, and maybe, you know, where the machine is. First of all, where it's cast, it should be counted. Once they start getting it out of there, because my number 2 principle is there must be a chain of custody. And that's something that does not exist in American elections. There's no chain of custody.
I just don't.
Every single election around the world, chain of custody. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I sorry to cut you. I just don't see how. I mean, how is it even possible to have this, no matter how you do it, in a way that does not have any possible human input? And if there's any point where you have human input, there's possible for manipulation, because everybody's got political opinions, and everybody is potentially somebody that would make and rationalize the choice of going, well, this one because of that, or maybe there's one that's on the line, like we have with the paper ballots, where it's like, well, it's a little bit fuzzed out, and I'm usually, if this doesn't get checked exactly, you're supposed to throw it away, and then you get that choice that needs to be made. And whether that choice they're making is leaning in one direction or not. There's 1,000 ways you can see that people can make these choices. So what's your thought, Pasta? How do you
the reason why is because the elites or the ruling class or whatever the hell you want to call them, I don't think there's anything elite about them. They made election security racist. They've equated to the people out there that if you put up securities, you're actually stopping people of color and minorities from voting.
But that's not what I'm talking about, really. And I agree that's ridiculous. But I'm saying, okay, so regardless of the narrative there, what are the securities that we're talking about? And are those something that can't also be manipulated based on the people involved with those securities? You know what I mean? Like it's like the idea of the fact checkers. And now you got fact checkers checking the fact checkers. At some point, who's checking the fact checker? Who's checking the fact checkers? The point is, people can manipulate their own opinions, or use their opinions to manipulate in any way you look at it. It seems almost
absolutely. My number one principle is that the people need to take back their elections. And that's something that Cynthia McKinney said to me, because I said, well, if you can change one thing right now, Dr. McKinney, what would you change? She says, enough is enough with these outsourcing of these small companies that do all our counting, do all the work and stuff like that. She says, what have you experienced overseas? I said, the people are involved. The more people you have involved, the less likely that it will get out of control, because everybody's watching each other's back. And if there's a chain of custody, and now you have your citizens involved, and they're very much, when you go to Nicaragua, at the tables, the actas, you have one of each party there.
Okay, that makes sense to me. That makes sense.
You have to get the people involved. You know what I'm saying? You have to take it away from those private companies and these corporations that have these software or these outsourcing of these what are they called when you get these little small groups, these workforces? Is there another name for them, or?
I don't know, but the heart of the matter, though, is that you still have a federal and state-run election system with appointed and both elected and unelected people vying for that position and trying to scramble to be in charge of who gets to captain a precinct, who gets to carry the ballots from one place to the other.
There's so much reform that has to come with that.
Ultimately, at the state level, who determines whether or not an election is valid?
Well, that's coming to question.
Just to Pasta's point, though, right? So, this is the only thing said so far that I'm like, I could see that at least being feasible. If at every single point, there's not something happening behind closed doors. There's not some government point at which they tally them back there, or they take your counts and translate them into a system. At every single point that anything's happening, you've got two people, one person from either side. Of course, that even then could be, but the point is that then you're going to be watching the other guy. Even if they're both trying to cheat, they're both going to be keeping an eye on each other. The point is that kind of makes sense. But to Steve's point, even with the people watching it, at least in this system here, it still ends up at a point at which there's a moment where the government itself can alter these things, that can manipulate things, whether one side or the other or both of them. And that's the problem. But I like that idea, Pasta. And I think that's why they're trying to go far away from the personal hands-on kind of situation.
Yeah. And that also, it's not just the two people here. It's also they're in the eyes view of the public. In other words, nothing's ever taken outside of sight. So that box there, you can look in. When they do the closing, they close the doors, but there's windows and everything you can see in. They organize everything in front of everybody, and then they open up the door. You're not allowed to come in, but you're allowed to see from a distance, and they do the public counting of each junta, which is each room there. I mean, listen. This is very easy to be done. This is so easy to get this done. To me, this is the greatest scam. I mean, I think the COVID situation was the second greatest scam, because this particular scam, when they're like, oh, we can't do what they do in Nicaragua or Honduras, we have too many people. I'm like, guys, this is basic fucking counting. We can do this. We can do this efficiently. We can do it just like them. We can get people involved. And if you point out to the crowd, who wants to volunteer in our elections? Almost everybody will raise their hand. Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, it doesn't make a difference. We could do this. This is the greatest scam there is. This is the way they control our democracy. This is the way they have their people put in. And we can fix this. This is very simple. This is very easy.
See, I'm with you. I'm with you on this so far on the idea that it has to also include more than two parties, which is just a silly, ridiculous, dumb thing to be like only these two matter, even though they trot people out. There's parties where they always omit, no matter how small. I want to see Vernon on that stage at the end of the day. Like, the people that are, I don't care how ridiculous and whether they really want to run or not, if they want to put in their equally given time, whatever it is. But the point is, at the end of the day, that seems valid, and the point today, even if we pretend we kind of do that, you get these examples of only Democrats or only Republicans moving ballots, or, this case, it was predominantly Democrats that you can see getting caught shoving these things in their car trunks or leaving them somewhere. That right there shows you that there's not people watching. How are you going to end up leaving these in the possession of people that have a one-sided perspective? It's anyway. I'm enjoying talking about this.
You can't get that stuff out of the room. Everything has to stay within a chain of custody.
Right.
These are easy. This is so easy. We can have this fixed in no time. And the thing about it is that the people who got screwed over the most, the progressives with Bernie Sanders several times, when you could just point to math, like, okay, something is wrong here with this math. What do you mean? And you can explain why. And you have a case. These are the people who are standing behind the establishment making these rules and going along because but Trump. That's why.
Right. Well, and even the cases we saw during the last election where there were people that were like standing over their shoulders and they were like, whoa, wait a minute, something happened. The first thing that got argued was that it was they're manipulating for their side. Instead of going like, let's hear this out, let's hear what the arguments are and decide. No, it was a pushback immediately because they've all day they've been being aggressive and all day they've been.
The Republicans get out of the room now.
Remember that? And it's like that. So it's very ridiculous. But all said and done, what I think is funny that after we're having this conversation is it would take a hell of a lot for me to first see that implemented and then see it play out before I'm ever even doing anything other than vote no in 2024, because that's where I still am, just to shock everybody.
I like Steve's idea. I like Steve's idea, even though I wouldn't endorse it. I like it because it is right when he says you chain the fucking doors down and let nobody vote, because the system is that outlandish. It's that ridiculous.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying? I believe in creating the evidence and going to do that and creating as much of a trail as possible and trying to hold the system accountable. That might be a pipe dream. That's what I believe. But when Steve says that stuff, they're like, what do you say to Steve who says that stuff when you believe in voting? I'm like, he's fucking right. The system is that outlandish that we need to, in a sense, maybe we should change the goddamn doors because it's not producing anything that the people are speaking about.
Or, we could just put all of our trust in this year's Catherine Harris.
Who's that?
We could do that.
Who's
the Secretary of State in Florida in the 2000 election.
No, who's this year's Catherine Harris?
I don't fucking know.
Oh, okay. I know who Catherine Harris is, man.
That's the
pink
point.
Sugar.
I'll leave you with one thing, and then I'll let you guys get going, get ready for Josh and everything. But so the point is, I want people to remember that a valid vote or a valid action in any election is abstention. We forget that. It's like jury nullification. They act like it's not there. They act like there are people, let's say, that have no idea what's going on and that don't vote because they don't care. Now, you could argue those people are you're part of the problem, whatever. But those like myself that make our well-informed decision and a conscious choice to publicly and politically abstain for any number of reasons that I don't think it's legitimate, that I don't think all the proper people are in front of you, all the choices aren't being displayed, all these things, historically speaking, going back to the founding of this country in that very room, abstaining was a valid political choice, which has now been bastardized into un-American or whatever, which is literally quintessentially American. So don't forget, if you believe that this system is broken, by abstaining is not giving them your vote. Right? Realize that these people, I argue that these things aren't even actually translating to what you think they are. Now, that's my opinion. But at the end of the day, if we have enough of the population that is choosing publicly to abstain, that is a huge statement. You can't keep relying on 10% of the population. Like, I think, what is it today, Pasta? Like 40% that actually come out and vote? Is it less than that? I forget the latest.
Not according to 2020. In some places, they had 104%. Like in
good God. Now I'm talking about the whole country, though.
No, I know it got up higher this year. What was it, like 60% almost, or in the mid 50s or something? Like, I can't remember what it was. But this year it was in 2020. It was ridiculous because it was mostly mail-in ballots.
I put it this way: the largest group of the largest voting bloc in America is non-voters.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Followed by independents.
Yeah.
Follow then the two parties. There are vastly more of us who don't like anything about this at all. Mm-hmm. To where if Ryan is suggesting there was an actual that's a 100, that's a refutation of the government.
Right.
on a national level. That's people saying, I don't want this. Well, you've got to at some point then congregate and determine what you do want.
Which exactly, but that comes next, right? And the point is that we need to establish this first. But at the end of the day, it's important to stand up and push back in a way that shows people that we don't feel represented, and that's a valid stance to take today. I was going to say one thing. What'd you say last, Pasta? I forgot. It was important, and I just forgot what you said. It's okay.
Well, we were talking about I think it was close to 60%.
Oh, right. Thank you. Well, so my point is, and this is another manipulation that they always do, is they act like, we had 60% turnout of registered voters, but that's not that. See, that's a manipulation. Yeah. What is the real population and how many actually turned out of that percentage? They're more than happy to jump on it and point out that Venezuela only had this much turnout of their population, even while Macron at the same moment in time had less, and they don't talk about that. The point is that this is a manipulation because, to Steve's point, I believe that most Americans are not partaking in the elections, and I think that's been shown in previous years. Bottom line, to leave you with, I think that it's important that we realize that when I say vote no in 2024, that's not some kind of game. This is legitimate stance to be taken in a time when we realize that we are not being represented by Trump, Biden, or anybody else. At the end of the day, the system, even if they are real people that are really fighting, is built to not change. And we have to, and again, I have answers to that. We could spend 3 hours talking about why an anarchistic society is actually a viable thing that we could transition to. But the point is that we need to first establish a problem is there and agree that is there, and that by voting, the lesser of two evils or whatever argument we spin up every single time is the problem.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people complain about the Great Reset. My idea of a Great Reset is to excommunicate the whole Congress, everybody there, and start over with a clean new voting system from scratch that's fair. Yeah, I know it's not going to happen, but that's my idea of a Great Reset.
That is a secondary action after this massive first overhaul. To just switch into, you could remove everybody, and we're still in the same broken infrastructure, and they're going to, the same powerful people will slime their way in.
I want the infrastructure. When I say let's change everything. Let's start from scratch.
Right, I'm with you. I'm with you on
that.
Yeah,
let's start from scratch.
All right, guys.
LastAmericanVagabond.com primarily. Go there first and then figure out all of the other places Ryan's going to be putting out his fantastic content. Ryan, you got anything else you want to leave us with, my friend? Thank you, by the way, for doing this this Tuesday. The last couple, it's been awesome.
TLAV Tuesdays is a hit.
You've been giving me some fun ideas for thumbnails.
I've been seeing those. I'm looking forward to the next one. I enjoy it. I enjoy the conversation, and it's nice to be able to, have my coffee and just be able to have just conversation about what's going on. I think it's fruitful. People out there are open people's minds to different perspectives, because even all three of us have different perspectives on all sorts of things. So thank you for having me on. I would say, just to shout out, I had a great interview with Spiro the other day. Scoras,
nice
on my new show on Rokfin exclusive. To be clear, it is behind. It's Rokfin exclusive, so you have to have an account to be able to view it. I only did that because it's right now. I'm trying to. I'm historically never really putting things behind a paywall. I just don't like to do that. I think it's important that information gets out, but at a time when we're being attacked in 1,000 different ways, this was one way to make up some of that financial growth,
absolutely
and keep it all going. But I am going to be putting out the podcast afterwards, so you guys can still listen to it. But it was a great discussion, and the show's called Moving Target. And like I said, I'm probably going to have both of you on at some point. It's about not just people being censored, but it's just about the whole situation, and how all of us are trying to kind of work around the system and try to get the truth out. And, it's becoming a great little thing. And I'm letting it kind of adapt in its own and grow into its own show. I'm not exactly sure where it will go, but check it out. And I'm doing a show today, so check that out as well. Thanks, guys.
Tomorrow, by the way, TLAV.
Yeah, right.
I want to hop in for 2 seconds. So this is my last week. They're engineers going back to high school.
Good.
And this is going to be my last TLAV Tuesday.
Oh.
I just want to say, out of the guests, you were one of the favorites that was on, because it's so fun seeing you guys talk. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. It means a lot. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and grab some tunes.
Yeah, but TLAV tomorrow, Danny Haifong, Matt Arrett, Combo Couch, moderated by Fiorella, noon Las Vegas time. Come check it out. I can't wait for it. It's going to be a great discussion. So you go kill it, my man, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Rumble in the communist jungle.